My family ignored my car crash. When their accounts froze, they panicked. So I ended it with one move. Today, they're both begging for forgiveness. After my vehicle accident placed me in the ICU, my family group chat overflowed with photographs from my sister's spa trip. Nobody showed. Days later, still wearing my hospital gown, I opened my phone to see 64 missed calls and a message from my father. "Call us back now. It's serious." That's what I did. And then it's strange to feel your existence slipping away in perfect stillness. No screaming or screeching tires, just glass cracking and airbags crashing into my face. One moment, I was thinking about dinner. Rotisserie chicken and drive-through tacos. The next thing I knew, I was upside down in my car, hanging from the seatbelt like a puppet, peering through a shattered windshield at a stop sign I hadn't seen coming. Someone opened the door and inquired whether I could hear them. I nodded. A wound near my temple caused blood to flow into my eye, and I recall tasting metal at the back of my neck. The rest is a blur: sirens, pills, and the scent of iodine. Everything merged into a long gray smudge of time. When I awoke properly, I was in a hospital room that smelled of disinfectant and stale air. A nurse diagnosed me with a dislocated shoulder, 2 broken ribs, and a slight concussion. Mild was the term they used. I couldn't even sit up on my own, but this was minimal. They told me I was lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt forgotten. After being transferred from the ER to a regular room, I waited for my phone to light up. Somebody has to know. Word spreads quickly in families, right? I figured Dad might have gotten a call. Perhaps Maya heard from someone. At the very least, I assumed my mother would check in. I was mistaken. My phone sat on a little hospital tray table for 2 days. No buzz, no ding. I did not touch it until late the second night. When I eventually opened it, I found 27 unread messages. Not from friends or coworkers, but from a family group chat. For one mad minute, I believed they knew, that they cared. The first shot, of Maya in a white robe, holding a champagne glass in one hand and flipping the peace sign with the other, hit you hard. The caption said, "Spa time, baby." It was followed by another image of her in a sauna. Then another. Fancy sushi. Her nails were painted, her feet were covered in rose petals, and she smiled behind a green clay mask, each more heedless than the last. Mom remarked on almost all of them. "So cute. You deserve it. I love you, sweetie." Dad sent a few thumbs-up emojis. I didn't receive a single SMS inquiring where I was. No mention of the automobile or the accident. Me. I only stared at the screen for a second. I really believed I was losing it. I told them about the crash, didn't I? No, I had not. I was unconscious when they took me in. The nurse asked if I wanted to notify anyone, and I declined. I believe deep down, I wanted to see if they'd reach out without being asked. They did not. 3 entire days have passed. The only visitors were nurses and a physical therapist who appeared to be around 12 years old. He continued encouraging me to take deep breaths to keep my ribcage from stiffening up. I did what he said, but every breath felt like someone was ramming a crowbar under my ribcage. I lay there in that scratchy hospital gown, hurt and alone, reflecting on all the times I'd assisted them. Maya made late-night phone calls asking for money. I silently paid Mom's credit card payments. Dad's car repair, which I covered last Christmas because he said money was tight. Every favor, just this once, I never hesitated. I was the reliable one, the fixer. And now, nothing. By the 4th day I was released but instructed not to drive or work for at least a week. I remained in the lobby for about an hour, waiting for a rideshare because no one offered to pick me up. I did not even ask. I went home wearing the hospital gown underneath my hoodie since I couldn't lift my arm high enough to change my shirt. I slept most of the day. The next morning, I eventually turned back on my phone's ringer. 64 missed calls. They all arrived in the last 48 hours. Most came from Dad, a couple from Maya, and one from Mom. There were no voicemails, only a text at the top of my screen saying, "Dad, call us back now. It's serious." I called right away. The phone didn't even ring once before he answered. His voice sounded strained. There was panic underneath, but he didn't yell. Not yet. What he said next made no sense at first. Something regarding misplaced paperwork. Something about the account getting frozen. I did not interrupt. I let him speak. As I listened, lying in my own apartment in the same gown they had released me in, I realized something. For the first time in years, they required more from me than I did from them. And I was done being the idiot. When I finally called my father back, I was still sitting in the same chair that I had collapsed into when I returned home from the hospital. I hadn't changed out of my hospital gown. I placed a hoodie over it, but the scratchy fabric on my ribs still hurt. The phone did not even ring. He picked it up immediately, as if he'd been holding it in his hand, and paced in circles. His voice sounded shaken, rather than angry. That was unusual for him. He stated they had been attempting to contact me for 2 days. I did not respond to that. He began explaining, or perhaps rambling, about Maya's unpaid rent, her credit card being denied at a restaurant, and her inability to access her bank account. At first, I suspected she had been hacked, but then he revealed that her backup card had also been frozen. The one with my name. He continued going. Mom wanted to send money for bills, but it bounced. Her credit card, which was also a secondary to one of mine, ceased operating during the checkout process. She assumed it was a problem until the bank reported suspicious activity. Then her phone bill's automatic payment failed. That's when the terror began. They suspected that I had been hacked or that there was a problem with the bank. They didn't even think about the idea that I did it. Dad questioned, almost cautiously, if I was aware of what was going on. I didn't say anything immediately. I simply allowed the stillness to carry out its purpose. Then I explained gently that I had frozen everything. I canceled the secondary cards, closed Maya's backup account, and barred all outgoing transfers. He sounded astonished, as if I had thrown a brick through the living room window. He questioned why. So I told him. I informed him I had been in an automobile accident 4 days ago. I flipped the automobile. Broken ribs, dislocated shoulder, concussion. I told him I'd been in the hospital for 3 nights and went out alone because no one in the family knew I was absent. Then I told him what had pushed me over the edge. The spa images, the group chat lit up like a Christmas tree with champagne, sushi, hot stones, and foot baths, while I was hooked up to an IV and 4. I told him I saw it all. And none of them, not Mom, Maya, or even him, had messaged me to inquire where I was, or why I hadn't responded. I did not need a parade. I simply needed someone to care. He attempted to recover. He replied they didn't know, but if they had, they would have come. I questioned him why they didn't wonder why I had gone silent. Why didn't anyone think to check in? I simply stated that they did not notice because they did not care. Not really. That's when he went into defensive mode. He explained that Maya had been struggling with a lot lately, that Mom was stressed, and that the spa weekend was going to help Maya with her anxieties. He even said that I should have spoken out. That was it. I told him I was tired of always being the one to reach out. I was finished being the family's safety net. I had paid Maya's rent 4 times in 2 years. Helped Mom consolidate her debts. I paid off a medical expense for Dad, which he never thanked me for. And now, when I needed something, not money, not assistance, just basic human decency, they didn't even realize I had left. He asked whether I really intended to abandon my family. Over this? I asked. No, I already had. I said quietly, laying in that hospital bed, browsing through spa photographs, knowing I could die and they wouldn't know until my credit card was refused at brunch. Then I hung up. That night, I opened my laptop and logged into every account I had access to, the ones they'd forgotten I'd helped set up for temporary assistance. Accounts that were never switched back to their original names. I created a spreadsheet. I proceeded line by line, phone bills, streaming services, rent, credit cards, college loans, and even Maya's gym membership. Everything was still coming through my accounts. I shut everything down. Freeze the credit cards. Automatic payments have been canceled. We changed our passwords. I sent requests to have my name removed from shared leases and accounts. I was not angry. I was methodical. I wanted every door closed and every pipeline turned off. I did not tell them. I just waited. The first text arrived the next morning. Maya, in all caps, inquired as to why her car was not working. Then another. Then a phone call. Then I got a message from Mom saying her account had been frozen and asking if I could contact the bank. Like the last time, Dad texted to see if I was furious and if we could talk. I did not respond to any of it. This wasn't vengeance. This was reality catching up with them. And I wasn't about to stop it. By the end of the week, they were all in a downward spiral. Maya called me 7 times in a single day. She sent extensive phone messages, each more dramatic than the last one. The first one was bewildered. The second person was annoyed. By the third, she was in tears. I couldn't tell if it was real or false anymore. She claimed she had been humiliated at her favorite cafe when her card was denied in front of everyone. Then she couldn't use her Uber account or pay her rent. Her landlord threatened late fees and the spa charged her an unaffordable cancellation fee. I listened to each message without responding. Mom texted next, said she didn't understand why her bank was acting strangely. Then she asked if I could help her sort things out. No apologies. There is no mention of the accident. No, how are you? Just straight to the problem, as if I were her customer service representative. I didn't respond. The next day, she sent 3 more texts, gradually adjusting her tone from pleasant to severe. Dad was the only person who tried to sound sensible. He contacted me again on Saturday morning and left a voicemail. He said he knew how unhappy I was, but freezing everything was an overreaction. Maya was a touch careless at times. And Mom did not mean to neglect me. He argued it was unfair of me to cut them off without warning. That was when I realized something. They didn't perceive it as me taking back what was mine. They viewed it as treachery. And that told me all I needed to know. Maya finally arrived to my apartment. She buzzed 3 times. I didn't respond. She texted from the lobby. She said she just wanted to talk. I ignored it. 10 minutes later, I noticed her automobile driving away through the blinds. There is no message after that. She sought access, not closure. She wanted her life to be unfrozen, not the reality. The next Monday I received a call from the bank. Apparently Maya attempted to authorize a purchase using my previous joint card information, which I had since deleted. They flagged it and inquired whether I wanted to submit it as attempted fraud. I did not. I simply instructed them to maintain the freeze in place and to monitor any further access attempts. There was silence for a few days after that. Too quiet. Then followed the group message. Mom, can we please be adults and talk this out? There was no mention of what they did. No mention of the hospital. There was no appreciation of how heavily they relied on me. Just a politely worded guilt trip with a ribbon on top. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, Dad called back. I picked up this time. He did not yell. He was careful, as if he were walking on ice. He claimed they were all going through a tough time. That Maya had been under pressure, and Mom was simply distracted. He mentioned that I had always been the strong one in the family. They needed me to come through again. That word again. Needed. I let him speak for a full 5 minutes. I believe he felt I was softening. Then I asked him one question. When did any of you last do something for me? There was a pause. A long one. Then he said, "That's not how families work." That was when I realized this wasn't a phase. This was permanent. They had used my quiet as a scent for far too long. They mistook my charity for obligation. They assumed blood implied ownership. Not anymore. I did not raise my voice. I did not threaten. I just informed him that the support has ended. I will pay my own bills and manage my own life. They can do the same thing. He attempted to object, but I ended the call before he could continue. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. And I could clearly see the breakdown starting. Maya's phone service was terminated 3 days after I disconnected everything. I didn't know at first. The silence on her Instagram was the tipping point for me. Not even a story. That girl used to post whenever she sneezed. I checked out of curiosity. Her page remained intact, but everything else had been deleted. There are no posts, no profile pictures. Then, an hour later, it was gone entirely. Deleted. That was my first serious indication that her idyllic little spa-laced world was crumbling. Mom, meantime, was doing what she always did. Pretending. She resumed sending messages in the group chat, as if nothing had happened. Cute article about fall soups. Who remembers this song? She posted a selfie with a pumpkin candle in the backdrop, titled, "Getting Cozy." No one responded, not even Dad. Then a letter arrived at my residence, not a text, not an email, a letter written in my mother's perfect cursive. The envelope was thick. She always had a penchant for drama. Inside was a 3-page handwritten note describing how things had gotten stressful and how she hoped we could reunite as a family again. She stated she was proud of me, that I had always been responsible. The glue was that she and Maya were going through something difficult and needed assistance, a temporary loan until Maya's problem was resolved. There was no mention of the accident, no apologies, just a pitch. She'd even supplied documentation, a screenshot of Maya's bank account with a negative balance and an overdraft of $418.72. A credit card statement showing nearly $3,000 in designer goods, auto payments, and a spa membership that she apparently failed to cancel. And at the bottom of the stack is a contract. I swear to God they drafted a loan agreement. Typed, with interest conditions, a payment plan, spaces for me and Maya to sign, and a spot for a witness signature. People use these to defend themselves from strangers in court, and they forwarded it to me, the man who paid her rent 6 times in silence. I sat with that letter for a very long time. It was not only arrogant, but also unnerving, as if they had lost touch with reality. I did not respond. That night, I had a knock on my door. Not a buzz, but a real knock. It was 9:30 p.m., and no one comes to my door that late. I peeked through the peephole. It was Tyler, Maya's ex. I had not seen him since their breakup 2 years ago. I answered the door, and he looked uneasy, as if he already regretted being there. He claimed Maya provided him my address, told him I was going through something, and that she needed his help. She said she painted a vision of me losing my mind, cutting everyone off out of nowhere, and abandoning her. I asked him directly, "Was she staying with you?" He shook his head. She inquired, and he wasn't dumb. Then he stated something unexpected. "She's with your mom now on the couch, and they're telling people you had a breakdown." I did not speak. He just continued chatting. He claimed he didn't believe her at first, but when he heard the version of events she was spreading, that I'd snapped after a minor family quarrel and cut them off because I couldn't manage stress, he decided to confront me immediately. So I told him everything, including the collision, the hospital, the silence, the money trail, and the shutdown. He listened quietly. No defense, no excuses for her. When he left, I assumed that was the end of it. But the next morning, he sent me a screenshot. My mother wrote a Facebook post. A vague update with a clear message. "Please keep our family in your prayers. Some people lash out when they're in pain. We're trying to stay strong through a very difficult time." Dozens of comments. Sending love. Hope everything is okay. You're such a strong mom. That was when it truly hit home. They weren't simply evading the truth. They were actively rewriting it. They were creating a new narrative in which I was unstable, emotional, and the antagonist. They couldn't get my wallet any longer, so they decided to target my reputation instead. I didn't become angry. I got ready. I took out my phone, opened the folder I had made after the accident, and added more. Screenshots from the group chat during my hospital stay, missed calls, the letter, the loan document, the spa costs, and even the Facebook post. Then I sent them all, not to Maya, not to Mom, to Dad. No message or context, just facts. A few hours later he called. I didn't respond. Then he texted, "I didn't know. I see it now. I'm sorry." He did not defend them. And that's when I understood the house of cards had already collapsed. I simply gave it one final push. After sending that text, Dad went silent. No follow-up, phone call, or emotional guilt trip. Nothing. Just those 6 words. I didn't know. I see it now. I'm sorry. I did not respond. I wanted to believe it meant something, that someone in that family had finally seen what I'd been hiding all these years. But I wasn't going to take the bait. I'd seen too many phony apologies and half-hearted promises that all ended the same way. They needed something else. What happened next caught me off guard. 2 days later, I received an email from Maya's landlord. It was a notification. Apparently my email was still posted as her emergency contact. The message was straightforward. Unpaid rent, no communication, and an impending eviction notice. She'd skipped the last payment, and the late fines were piling up. They tried to call. No response. They were giving her another 5 days before filing. I glanced at the screen, recalling all the times I'd wired money to the same office. Quietly, automatically. She didn't say thank you half the time. She once texted me, "Done T-checks," and then didn't speak to me for weeks. She had used up all of her lifelines. Later that night, Tyler texted me again. He'd gone over to Mom's to pick up some of his belongings, which Maya still had. She said she looked harsh, with puffy eyes and pacing like she hadn't slept. She tried to persuade him to talk to me again. She said she could not believe I would do this to her. He did not bite. Then he said something unexpected. Mom and Maya had had a screaming match. Maya scolded her for not fixing things, and Mom said that she wasn't made of money. Tyler said things became terrible, as in, neighbors called the cops awful. Maya borrowed Mom's car without permission the next morning, left her stranded. That was the first genuine break in Maya's armor. She turned on the only person who was still supporting her. And then I realized something. They weren't just frightened because the money had disappeared. They were terrified since their entire dynamic was constructed around me, silently bearing the burden. And when I took a step back, it wasn't just about the expenses, it was about identity. They had nothing solid underneath until I funded the delusion. I assumed that would be the last straw, but I was mistaken. The final straw arrived 3 days later. When I got home, I found an envelope stuffed under my door. There is no stamp or name inside, only folded paper. I opened it. It was a single sheet with a screenshot printed out. A bank transfer confirmation from one of Maya's old Venmo accounts, which I forgot she had access to. It indicated an attempt to transfer $900 from one of my backup bank accounts, which I hadn't touched in over a year. She attempted to pull it off softly. What she didn't realize was that I had already locked that account days before. The transfer failed, but she still attempted. She scoured. She recalled the account and attempted to access it one last time. That was it. There is no longer intermediate ground. There is no more chance for repair. I went to the police the following morning. I did not press full charges, yet. However, I filed a fraud alert and documented the attempt just in case. The bank flagged her name, IP address and device. If she tried again, it would happen automatically. I did not inform her. I did not tell anyone. I simply let it lay there, waiting like a tripwire. And then I blocked everyone. Phone, email, social media, group chat. To be safe, I even restricted access to accounts they were unaware of. I closed every open door. The repercussions continued to unfold on its own. Maya lost her residence. Mom's utilities were switched off due to non-payment. Their social circle began to decrease as well, most likely because they were tired of the drama. Dad remained quiet. I believe he now recognized the consequences of remaining silent. And I didn't gloat. I did not smile. I recently lived calmly and peacefully for the first time in years. There was no phone buzzing at midnight, no sudden bank alerts. There is no guilt. Only quietness. They labeled it selfish. I called it freedom. I cut them off 2 months ago. No calls, texts, or letters. Simply silence. The kind I used to seek in the midst of their commotion. Maya has never apologized. Not for a fraud effort. Not for the falsehoods. Not for avoiding the hospital. The last I heard, she was staying with a college acquaintance in a little apartment downtown. She lost her automobile. She lost her flat. The majority of the folks she used to post about are no longer with her. It turns out that being the entertaining one only gets you so far when you can no longer pay the bills. Mom is still faking. I know because my cousin forwarded me screenshots of a group post in which she addressed me again, some vague phrase about damaged families and learning to forgive. What do you forgive? Being the only person who eventually said no. What she never understood was that it wasn't about money. It was about not being spotted. I was their answer, safety net, and quiet sponsor, but never a person, never someone they thought could be broken. And I did fall down silently, in a hospital bed with no guests and 27 unread spa images. As for Dad, he remained utterly mute. That surprised me the most. I assumed he'd try to reconstruct something, simply to make himself feel better. But I believe he finally grasped what it meant when I did not respond to his last message. It was not a threat, it was a closing statement. I moved last week with a new apartment, bank and phone number. There was no forwarding address provided. I didn't even tell the cousin, who tried to remain neutral. I'm not afraid of them, but I'm not allowing anyone to disturb my peace this time. The old Ralph would have left the door cracked open just in case. The newer one does not. I still have the screenshots, the letter, and the voicemail from Maya, who sobbed, "How could you do this to me?" during the Venmo transfer attempt. I don't want vengeance. I want to remember. Because as no one will tell you, breaking off your family does not always feel like a noble act. It seems like grief, like you're mourning something that never existed in the way you had hoped. But each day, that grief becomes a bit quieter. Every day, my phone remains silent. And the silence feels more like safety. They wasted years believing that I would always be present, that they could burn the bridge, and I would still build another. But they eventually discovered what occurs when the bridge builder walks away, taking every plank with him. And I learned something too. That's not the family that shares your name. It is who appears when your world collapses, not when theirs does. And that no one, not even blood, has a lasting right to your generosity, if they consider it as a commodity to be exchanged. This wasn't vengeance. It was about survival. And for the first time in my life, I'm actually living.